with the release of 50 billion naira for the payment of earned academic allowances, and while another 150 billion naira had been captured in the 2025 budget for needs assessment to be disbursed in 3 tranches. The federal government has directed the Vice-Chancellor of federal universities across the country to strictly enforce the no work, no pay policy against members of the Academic Staff Union of Universities currently participating in the ongoing nationwide strike. In a circular signed on Monday by the Minister of Education, Dr. Tunji Alausa, and copied the head of the Civil Service of the Federation, the Permanent Secretary of Education, the Pro-Chancellors of all federal universities, Director General of the Budget Office of the Federation, the Accountant General of the Federation, and the Executive Secretary of the National Universities Commission. The Minister expressed dissatisfaction over reports of the continued industrial action by ASU, despite repeated calls for dialogue, stressing that government would no longer tolerate a non-compliance with extant labor laws. The minister directed all vice-chancellors of the federal universities to immediately conduct a roll call and physical headcount of all the academic staff in their institutions. He also instructed them to submit a comprehensive report indicating staff members who are present and performing their official duties and those absent or participating in the strike. The Minister of State for Agriculture, Aliyu Sabi Abdullahi, has called for the need for Nigeria to sustain a steady funding to strengthening increased rice yield, others agricultural produce to close existing gaps. He gave the advice at a public hearing on the 3 bills organized by the House of Representatives Committee on Agricultural Production and Services. Correspondent Linda Ike reports that Abdullahi noted that Nigerians' yield gap is a major problem causing food security in the country. The committee chairman, Bello Kauje, who sees agriculture as a backbone of Nigerians' economy and the most reliable path to poverty reduction, called for a sound policy supported by effective legislation. A representative of the Speaker, House of Representatives, Isiaka Ibrahim, the Deputy Chief Whip of the House, and said that the proposed bills are a blueprint of a more secured, prosperous and self-reliant Nigeria. The bills include a bill for an act to amend the National Agricultural Development Fund, a bill for an act to establish the National Farm Settlement Agency to promote agricultural development, ensure food security and foster economic growth, and a bill for an act to provide a legal framework for the establishment of National Rice Production, a Processing and Research Institute, Gungu, Kebbi State.
We know providing access is a critical infrastructure which requires a lot of funds. And we in RAMP, most of the effort made is majorly contribution by the loan from AFD and World Bank, with little from the federal government. So now that National Agricultural Development Fund is in place, we feel it desirable to get some funding in order to maintain or even establish more rural routes in order to provide access to the rural people, and also to improve agro-logistics centers, which is the acronym of market. We also develop market. So this, as we know, if we are able to provide access, then we are really opening to develop the agricultural development in the country.
Areas we have spoken about essentially cover where we have suggested broadening the financing powers of the fund to allow for equity investments, concessional loans and other blended finance instruments that will allow the fund to perform with better world practices. We have looked at areas that have to do with what we consider operational. Some of the clauses from the journal cover areas that are already covered by the PSR, the Public Service Rules, and we have also made comments on that. We have also made comments in areas mainly typographical and some misspelling errors. But since we are representing, I do not want to bore the committee with that. We will go back. We've taken Honorable Shaba's this thing. We'll compare with the journal and represent as mandated.
As a committee, we are committed to ensuring that every law passed by this House strengthen productivity, enhance innovation, and provide real value to Nigerian farmers. We will continue to collaborate with the executive relevant agencies and the private sector to make agriculture a business that drives national prosperity.
As it is said, in agriculture, access to finance and ensuring that we are able to fund critical segments of the agricultural value chain is key. And I think that is what the NADF was established to achieve. Now, let me quickly move to the other aspects. The Farm Settlement Bill, or agency bill, for us, at the outside, I would say is a good idea. But when we also look at the presence of the National Agricultural Land Development Authority, NALDA, we tend to say this might be a duplication of the function of NALDA. And as I speak to you, they are already having current farm settlement program in 2 or 3 locations. I'm sure they will be able to also make some very solid, what do they call it, presentations on that. But these are, initial take, like we said. It's not a bad idea, but I think we need to also look at existing framework and ensure that we are not duplicating. We are not duplicating other functions.
Placing the fund to close ties or at the expense of projects that have life cycle, that you may not even be able to determine their future, we think it's a dangerous thing, especially when you consider experience from agriculture. Thank you very much. Another very important one is that maybe something close, very close to some of the comments by the minister before he left, that we have structures on ground in this country, and the essence of wanting to develop agriculture should not be to just neglect those ones and start looking for new ones. The Agricultural Development Program, ADPs, if there is something important in agricultural development in Nigeria, ADP is number 1. They have been far neglected. Where are we taking them along as far as this is concerned? And that is why we objected that instead of ministries, leave the ministries alone. Let ADPs, because with that structure, you'll be better off. And we also propose that we should knock out a place where you are talking about building special structure in different states. That would be like a waste, because with the ADPs in place, you have the structures. You are only going to add very little thing to them, and you can get a very, very, very good result.
The National Assembly has reaffirmed its commitment to overhauling Nigerians' electoral laws ahead of the 2027 general elections and aiming to enhance democracy, transparency, and public confidence in the voting process. This assurance was made during the public hearing by the Joint Committee on Electoral Matters of both the Senate and House of Representatives, held on Monday at the National Assembly complex in Abuja. Opening the session, the President of the Senate, Senator Godswill Akpabio, represented by the Senate's Chief Whip, Senator Tahir Mongono, emphasized that each generation must renew democratic principles to reflect the people's aspirations. He described electoral reforms as the lifeblood of democracy, noting that the legitimacy of leadership depends on the credibility of the electoral process. The Speaker of the House of Representatives Right Honorable Tajuddin Abbas, represented by the House Majority Leader, Honorable Julius Ihombere, said the process will culminate in repealing the Electoral Act 2022 and enacting a new and improved legal framework ahead of the 2027 elections. The Joint Committee Chairman, Senator Simon Lalong, and Honorable Adebayo Balogun also highlighted the need for laws to evolve with Nigerians' current realities. The lawmakers further stressed that electoral reform is a key pillar of the 10th National Assembly's agenda, underscoring that credible elections are essential for national stability and democratic growth.
I might not be able to elaborate on all the areas that we considered for amendments, but I will mention a few which are of interest to the public, such as the early voting, which means that people on essential duties will be able to have a week or two opportunity to vote earlier than the others. Non-compulsory use of PVC has been agitated by the populace. Timeline for elections and election tribunals, which is proposed to be moved from the Constitution to the Electoral Act, although this will still require some constitutional amendments. Voting by inmates, which already had a judgment compelling the INEC to ensure that inmates are also given their constitutional rights. Replacement of members of legislative houses without by-election, which was also a proposal from INEC trying to look at way of costing costs. Transmission of results, political parties and internal democracy, amongst many others.
This effort will eventually culminate in the repeal of the Electoral Act of 2022 and the enactment of a new Electoral Act, which we hope to see signed into law well ahead of the 2027 general elections to enable the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, to be properly guided and adequately prepared. The Electoral Act Amendment Bill seeks not only to strengthen measures against electoral fraud, improve access for persons with disabilities, and establish clearer timelines for resolving disputes, but also to reduce the ambiguities that trailed previous elections. Our goal is to make elections less contentious, lower their cost through single-day voting, and make the process of party primaries more democratic and inclusive.
Elections are the lifeblood of democracy, and the legal framework that governs them must be robust, responsive, and reflective of the realities of our time. This public hearing is a clear demonstration of the leadership of the National Assembly as well as the Joint Committee to open governance and citizen participation. It is our firm belief that laws that affect the generality of the people must benefit from the input, their experience, and their aspirations. It is in that spirit that we invited stakeholders from across the spectrum, political parties, civil societies, electoral experts, security agencies, and media experts.
Every generation of Nigerians must in its turn polish the mirror of democracy so that it reflects the truth of its age and the hope of its people. Laws like nations must adopt or they decay. The Electoral Act of 2022 served a noble purpose, but experience has taught us that perfection is a pursuit, not a possession. The law we make today must correct the weakness of yesterday and prepare the ground for the victories of tomorrow. Electoral reform is not just a technical exercise. It is the lifeblood of democracy. It ensures that leadership is born of legitimacy and that power flows from the people, not from privilege. A nation's greatness is not measured by the noise of its elections, but by the credibility of their outcome. When citizens believe that their votes count, they invest faith in the republic. When they doubt it, the soul of democracy begins to fade. Our duty as legislators is therefore to build a system where every Nigerian, from Sokoto to Calabar, from Yenagoa to Kano, and from Maiduguri to Port Harcourt. They didn't write Maiduguri here, but I decided to mention Maiduguri. From Maiduguri to Port Harcourt. Knows that his or her vote is sacred and the process is shielded from manipulation.
The Speaker of House of Representatives, Tajuddin Abbas, says that effective takeoff of the Dangote refinery marked a turning point in the nation's quest for energy self-sufficiency. He stated this on Monday while declaring open the first annual Downstream Petroleum Week at the National Assembly. Represented by the Deputy Speaker of the House, Benjamin Kallo, Abbas said that the anticipated emergence of other private indigenous refineries underlined the need for the National Assembly to continue to create a functional environment for industries to thrive. The Chairman, House Committee on Petroleum Resources Downstream, Ikagwono Ugochinyere, acknowledged the recent face-off between the Dangote refinery and the sector union, and urging them to always engage in dialogue over destruction. Correspondent Linda Ike reports that Ugochinyere added that a Downstream Week is designed to be a recurrent space for national dialogue.
We must also be honest about the challenges that persist. Our downstream sector continues to face issues related to infrastructure deficits, market volatility, supply chain inefficiencies, and the need for regulatory clarity. Addressing this requires sustained collaboration between the executive and legislature, underpinned by sound policy direction and consistent implementation. It is also a call for enhanced private sector participation, investment in technology, and adherence to global best practices.
On labor issues, it must be noted that no reform can succeed without industry harmony. The committee is aware of the recent labor concerns involving some of the refiners and sector unions, which, while such action issues are not uncommon in developing economies, they must never be allowed to undermine productivity or national stability. I therefore call upon both labor unions and industry operators to always pursue dialogue over disruption at all times. The SAL committee stands ready to facilitate peace, fairness, and mutual respect in all industrial engagements.
No nation reforms without pain, and no people are transformed without resolve. Let no one imagine that journey to energy stability will be short or simple. There will be no moments of doubt, moments of difficulty, but if we stay the course, the result will be stronger, fairer, and more prosperous for the Nigerian nation. We must continue to confront smuggling, sabotage, and inefficiency in our distribution system. We must expand our gas infrastructure, strengthen our refineries, and modernize their storage and supply chain. We must also embrace the reality that the world is moving towards cleaner, renewable energy, and prepare our children not for the past, but for the future.
Nigerians therefore expect certain deliverables from this conference, especially as they concern the prevalent infrastructure deficit that has hampered the full optimization of liquefied petroleum gas, the LPG, and compressed natural gas, the CNG. Solutions to energy security issues, pipeline vandalism, and dubious pricing, and policy clarity over certain regulations in the sector. As part of the larger energy transition, this conference is expected to develop a roadmap for sustainable energy practices and discover opportunities in new technologies that power solar, that wind, and hydroelectricity.
The Lagos State government says it is dedicated to the welfare and dignity of traditional rulers and will continue to support advocacy for clearly defined constitutional roles for them as custodians of culture. The Lagos State Governor, Babajide Sanwo-Olu, said this at the 2025 Lagos National Executive Committee meeting of the National Council Traditional Rulers of Nigeria, themed the traditional institution, the imperative of its inclusion in the effective and efficient governance in Nigeria, held at Victoria Island, Lagos. Governor Sanwo-Olu said the state would continue to collaborate to ensure a traditional institution remain impartial, and while encouraging the rulers to remain steadfast as pillars of integrity and cultural icons. The chairman coordinating committee of the council, the Edsun Yahaya Abubakar, thanked the governor of Lagos State for hosting the meeting designed for the umbrella body of traditional rulers who were the bedrock of any government in ensuring peaceful coexistence and unity. The co-chairman of the council and Sultan of Sokoto, Saad Abubakar, who reiterated the belief of traditional rulers in a greater united Nigeria, called on all to love and pray for the leaders to help them achieve the best for the nation. Declaring the meeting open, the Imo State Governor Hope Uzodinma said the Constitution should not be silent on the need to recognize the roles of traditional rulers as they remain the first point of contact in any crisis or issue, and hence the need for a legal backing to be given to the roles and urging them to rise above partisan politics and support the present administration.
Conflicts and driving community engagement. As our nation grapples with complex social, economic realities, security issues, it is critical that we tap into the wisdom and the influence of our traditional fathers in a coordinated and structured manner. I therefore want to encourage our esteemed monarchs to remain steadfast. You are pillars of integrity. You are the beacon of fairness, and you are the centerpiece of unity. Our communities look to you not just as cultural symbols, but as moral guides. Your voices hold significant power. When you speak out for peace, equality, and progress, you have the ability to touch hearts, to shape the future, to let us collaborate to ensure that our traditional institutions stay impartial, you remain inclusive, and you sync with the broader vision of a just and a thriving nation.
Noise from across the divide of this great country. We believe in this country, we believe in Nigeria, and I believe all of us here are here for one important reason: for a greater and more united Nigeria. And we cannot do so unless we honestly, and I mean honestly, love one another, support one another, and try to do the best we can as we try to offload the heavy load the Almighty placed on our shoulders as our leaders, as leaders of our people. To the governors, don't lose hope, because the slogan for this government is renewed hope.
Distinguished royal fathers, your call for constitutional recognition is not a demand for privilege. It is a demand for clarity and for the protection of a role that has survived the war, survived colonization, survived the military rules and political instability. I assure you that if this matter comes before the National Assembly or requires support at any level of government, we will all stand with you without hesitation. I would therefore urge you to close rank with Mr. President, the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Close rank with him for the interest of our people. Seek for an audience with the leadership of National Assembly, with the Governors Forum in attendance, so that this matter can be resolved once and for all.
The former governor of Ogun State and the senator representing Ogun State, Ogun East, Otumba Gbenga Daniel, has called on Nigerians to support the re-election bid of President Bola Tinubu in 2027. Daniel made the appeal during the Bola Ahmed Tinubu Otumba Gbenga Daniel mid-term community assessment and a review tour to Ijebu Imushin in Ijebu East local government area of Ogun State. He highlighted the unprecedented progress recorded in key sectors, and particularly the solid mineral sector, as proof of the Tinubu administration's commitment to Nigerians' economic transformation. The senator commended the president's bold reforms, noting that they had repositioned the mining industry, the revenue in the sector rising sharply from 6 billion naira to 38 billion naira within just 1 year. Daniel emphasized that continuity in leadership at both the federal and legislative levels was crucial to achieving a long-standing regional aspiration, such as the creation of Ijebu Remo State and the Ijebu Seaport Project. He explained that the tour was not a political rally, but a grassroots engagement initiative aimed at evaluating progress, gathering feedback, and communicating federal policies directly to the people. The senator also called for sustained collaboration with the federal government and the key stakeholders to harness the region's rich natural resources for lasting prosperity for present and future generations.
Let me say with emphasis that the mining sector under President Tinubu has received greater attention, and the revenue from the solid mineral sector has grown from about 6 billion naira to 38 billion in just 1 year. This is a record-breaking transformation driven by efficiency, transparency, and accountability. And this was made possible by the President's bold declarations that the era of exporting raw materials is over, that mining licenses will only be granted to investors who commit to local processing and value addition as a means of creating jobs for our local population and industries to ensure that prosperity drives from mining state in Nigeria. As you are aware, as a result of the withdrawal of petroleum subsidy, the president has now released a lot of money to not just the state, but directly to the local government. As a matter of fact, we are hearing that the release from federal government to certain states is sometimes up to 3 times, sometimes up to 4 times of what they've been receiving. The president has asked me to tell you to all call your local and state governments to do more and justify the amount that is being released on a monthly basis. And I want to implore all of us in Ijebu East, and what I'm doing this afternoon is something I want you all to learn from. I'm sure you know what is going on in the political arena. You know what is going on. But when that issue is going to be resolved, you are not going to be there. And the way my governor, my senator had related and handled issues, I have no doubt that when the time comes, we shall excel. I say when the time comes, we shall excel.
When we are talking about roads, where resources are coming out and the roads are not good, then no return to the rural areas. It is a problem to that area. Especially we have the Imobi Road, Ogbere Road, Itele Road, Ijebu Ife, Ijebu Imushi, and even the interior, J4, J3, where most of the timbers are brought to the town. We discover we don't benefit. All our KBSs don't benefit anything from those resources. Rural electrification, sir. Most of the areas here are in darkness. And the problem is mainly because we have old transformers. All those new set of people that came in, they took over the power, but they are not ready to replace those old transformers. In this area, we need transformers. Please, we are in darkness.
The First Lady of Nigeria, Senator Oluremi Tinubu, has secured the commitment of the Carter Foundation towards addressing the country's growing challenge of out-of-school children. During a meeting with the founder and chairperson of the Carter Foundation, Sheikh Moza Bint, Mrs. Tinubu sought collaboration to support the federal government efforts to reform the Al-Majiri and out-of-school children education system. The First Lady in Media, Busola Kukoi, who disclosed these on Monday, said that the First Lady noted that Nigeria currently have over 15 million out-of-school children, the highest figure globally, and said the government is implementing a transformative model that integrates Islamic and formal education. She emphasized that tackling the challenge requires international partnership and saying that given the magnitude of this challenge and competing demands on our national resources, Nigeria cannot achieve this alone. The human rights organization Corporate Accountability and Public Participation Africa, CAPA, has condemned the privatization of the water sector across African countries, describing it as a major threat to public access to safe and affordable water. Speaking during the 5th African Week of Action Against Water Privatization convened by Our Water, Our Right Africa Coalition in Lagos on Monday, the CAPA's executive director, Akimbode Oluwafemi, said that access to safe drinking water must be recognized as a fundamental human right. Oluwafemi noted that privatization has led to increased water tariffs, making it unaffordable for millions of citizens, especially those in low-income communities. And also speaking, Sefa Ikwa, Programmed Officer of Water Campaigns at CAPA, said the privatization model has undermined resilience in water system and priorities short-term profits over public welfare. Other speakers at the event criticized the private water companies for becoming unaccountable to the public, accusing them of cherry-picking communities they serve and violating the human right to water through discriminatory service delivery.
At a time that we need stronger, publicly accountable systems to guarantee universal access, we are seeing growing pressure to privatize our water systems and hand control of this essential resource to profit-driven corporations despite overwhelming public opposition. While nature cries for justice in the face of the climate emergency, capital sees opportunity. multinational corporations now peddle desalination and other privatization schemes as climate solutions, selling back to us the very water that belongs to the people. Today, we reject these four solutions. We assert that the way we protect and govern water will determine whether our communities can endure the crisis ahead. The resistance against the commodification of water from local communities is not an isolated struggle. It is part of a broader continental affirmation that public services, when transparently managed and democratically governed, form the very firm foundation of social justice and climate resilience. In this collective defiance lies the blueprint for our collective survival.
We reject this trend outright. OWRAC rejects this trend outright. The climate crisis must not be turned into a pretext for water privatization. Climate resilience is not an abstract slogan, neither is it built on the transfer of public goods into private hands. It is the capacity of societies to absorb shocks, protect ecosystems, and guarantee continuity of life when disaster strikes. Public water systems, when adequately financed and managed democratically, are the backbone of such resilience. They carry the potential to plan for the long term, to extend service to marginalized communities, and to integrate social equity with environmental protection. Privatization, by contrast, undermines resilience and thrives on short-term profit. Its record across Africa and beyond is consistent, neglecting low-income and rural communities considered unprofitable, as well as raising tariffs that lock the poor out of access. In times of climate stress, such models only deepen exclusion and leave societies exposed to disaster.
And we must situate all this within the context of what I call disaster capitalism, a capitalist order that profits from people's misfortune. And we have the global bad Samaritans, the World Bank, the IMF, the marketing agents for transnational capital, and they're actually in charge of saying privatization of water will bring a lot of things. But the reality we have actually contradicts that. They equally argue privatization will bring efficiency. Even in Britain, water privatization has led to a lot of problems.
We are challenging the Lagos State government today on the basis of this meeting. If it indeed works for people, if indeed it says that what it is doing is for people's good, we are asking them for three things. One is to pause all its ongoing public-private partnerships, especially its recent one, until a proper, honest, democratic stakeholder meeting has been held. We're asking it again to open up all ongoing PPP.
The legal tussle instituted by the Lagos State government against 3 suspected land grabbers over the forgery of land documents for parcel of land in Lekki area of the state on Monday suffered another setback as the Lagos State High Court Annex at Tafawa Balewa Square adjourned the case to January the 12th, 2026. When the legal tussle came up in court, presided over by Justice Sharifat Shunaike on Monday, the Director of Public Prosecution, Babatunde Martins, told the court that the State Attorney General and Commissioner for Justice, Lawal Pedro, has given the State Police Command a directive to carry out further investigation over the land document forgery case. Monday's sitting made it the second time the 3 suspects, Adebayo Keju, who is the first defendant, Ademola Owolabi, the second defendant, and Alex Ochonogo, the third defendant, were arraigned together in court and in dock after many adjournments due to their failure to present themselves in court. Correspondent and counsel to the first defendant, Abiodun Layono, and counsel to the second defendant, Bashua, both senior advocates of Nigeria, did not object to the directives for further police investigation. And however, the counsel to the third defendant, Bayo Oyetibo, raised objection, pointing out that the call for further police investigation was repressive and abuse of court proceedings, as the prosecution should have gone to court without conclusion of investigation, to which the DDP responded that it was regrettable that Oyetibo would make such comments. The suspected land grabbers allegedly committed the offense in year 2015 at 8604 Safe Court Apartment, Ikate Lekki, by forging an affidavit of loss of certificate of occupancy purportedly sworn at the Registry of Ministry of Justice, Lausa Secretariat on September the 23rd, 2014, to falsely indicate that the original of the certificate of occupancy 36/36 1994W issued to one Hamzat A.I. Mustafa got missing. And as the global fight against gender-based and sexual violence gains momentum, survivors and victims are increasingly being called upon to come together, form a strong support network, and collectively pursue the justice and accountability of the harms they have endured. This call formed the core of discussion at the 2025 Domestic Violence Awareness Month Survivors Forum, which took place in Lagos, organized by Project Alert on Violence Against Women, a frontline organization advocating for the rights and protection of victims of domestic and gender-based violence. The forum served both as a solemn remembrance and a celebration honoring the memory of individuals who tragically lost their lives to domestic violence, and while also recognizing the resilience, courage, and enduring strength of survivors who continue to speak out and demand change. Speaking with journalists at the event, the executive director of Project Alert, Josephine F.R. Chukwume, strongly condemned domestic violence in all its forms, and stressing that such abuse is intolerable regardless of whether the perpetrator is male or female. F.R. Chukwume also highlighted the need for both national and international attention to issue of domestic violence, and adding that menace is a global crisis that affects not just women, but also men and children, which she says is not peculiar to Nigeria alone, as it transcends borders, race, and ethnicity. And in her part, the licensed clinical psychologist and sex therapist, Dr. Pamela Udoka, highlighted the importance of survival agency in the healing and reintegration process. She emphasized the survivors must be supported to take active roles in reclaiming their lives and restoring their place in society in order to move forward and pursue the future they envision. She urged survivors to take healing journey gradually and to focus on rebuilding their confidence and identity.
A month that organizations, government agencies should intentionally spotlight domestic violence globally. Domestic violence is an issue that is not restricted to Nigeria or any ethnic group or whatever. It's an international problem. It's a big problem. It's a problem that affects women, men, children, everyone. You know, oftentimes we want to make the mistake that domestic violence is just about women. Yes, statistics have shown that predominantly more women are more victims than men. But still, that does not take away the fact that men, boys are also victims of domestic violence. Just this week, the media was awash, the social media was awash with the story of the young military personnel who just in 5 months of marriage got killed in an act of domestic violence with his wife. This is not about who started it or who didn't start it. The issue here is that a life has been lost.
It's one thing to survive. It's another thing to thrive and continue living while surviving. Surviving does not mean you just live and stay in one place, isolate yourself and do nothing. you have to try and put one foot in front of the other. So what I have tried to do with them today is to make them realize that they've gone through a traumatic experience, and the way they feel, the symptoms that they experience are all valid, as consequences of the trauma. Now, how do they now cope with those symptoms? What do they do to continue their healing journey? Because they must heal from that traumatic experience. And like I told them, it's not a light switch that you turn on and turn off. So when you understand that, okay, you have passed through this experience and you've learned coping skills, applying those coping skills will now help you to move forward.
For survivors, I would say focus is key. When I say focus is key, because if you start to live in that situation, you would not grow. So therefore, you have to now determine your purpose going forward. What is your purpose? Then focus your energy. For every survivor, well done. I say you have strength to have survived. I would advise that they channel their energy and their goals, because they have that strength, towards what will take them to the next level and for them to achieve their purpose. And to the government, why the survivors are working towards leaving that situation, it is our responsibility to support them, to ensure that justice is meted to whatever the cause is.
And that's it on the local news. We'll now take a short break. We'll come back. We'll take some stories from the foreign scene. Welcome back. In the foreign scene, a bus has crashed into a mountainous region in the north of South Africa, killing at least 42 people. The vehicle veered off a steep mountain road on the N1 highway near the town of Makodo in Limpopo province before tumbling down an embankment and landing upside down. The vehicle was traveling from the Gebra in South African Eastern Cape province in Zimbabwe and Malawi. An emergency crew walked through the night to pull victims from the wreckage and transport survivors to nearby hospitals. More than 30 injured passengers received medical treatment. Authorities said some may still be trapped inside an overturned bus, but according to the public broadcaster, a death included 18 women and 17 men and 7 children. A 10-month baby was among the victims. Violet Mathy, a transport official for the Limpopo province, told the newsroom Africa. The road, a major highway connecting South Africa to Zimbabwe, remained closed in both directions on Monday as rescue operations continued. Families of many of the Palestinian prisoners being released by Israel under an exchange deal says that their long-awaited freedom is bittersweet after they learned their loved ones would be deported to third countries. Media office said at least 154 Palestinian prisoners are being freed on Monday as part of the swap for Israeli captives held in Gaza will be forced into exile by Israel. The Palestinian prisoners, and according to the United Nations, those to be deported are among a larger group of Palestinians being released by Israel. 250 people held in Israel prisons, along with about 1,700 Palestinians seized from the Gaza Strip during the 2 years of Israel war, many of whom were forcibly disappeared. Hamas and Israel have carried out a prisoner exchange deal under the ceasefire agreement that saw the release of nearly 2,000 Palestinians imprisoned in Israel jails and 20 Israel captives held in the Gaza Strip. Cheers broke out in Israel early on Monday as television channels announced that the first of 7 captives had been handed over to the International Committee of Red Cross, ICRC. The Israeli military later confirmed the 13 more captives taken from Israel during the Hamas-led attack on October 7, 2023, were also transferred. And later on Monday, Hamas military wing said it also planned to hand over the bodies of four dead captives later in the day. The released Palestinians include some 1,700 seized from Gaza during the war and held without charge, while as 250 held in Israel prisons. The news of the release was bittersweet for the loved ones of some freed prisoners, as 154 of them were forced into exile. We'll now take a short break. Now, where we'll come back, we'll take some stories in sport. In sport, Cape Verde beat East Watini 3-0 on Monday to secure a spot at the 2026 World Cup, booking their place in football's global showpiece for the very first time. The team from an archipelago off the coast of Senegal has about 550,000 inhabitants, marking Cape Verde the country with the smallest population to represent Africa in the global showpiece. Cape Verde won the Group D with 23 points, 4 more than Cameroon, who hold the African record for World Cup appearances with 8. Cameroon drew 0-0 with Angola in Yaoundé. And after dominating the first half of 2026 qualifier but seldom threatening to score, the Blue Sharks struck twice and threw a Dylan and Willis medal in the first minute, and after half-time, before a 15,000 flag-waving crowd in Praia. And Livramento claimed his 4th goal of the 10th round qualifying campaign in 48 minutes, and Semedo struck 6 minutes later. Both goals came from close-range tap-ins. Cape Verde added a 3rd goal in added time when Stopira, a substitute from Sao Paulo, pounced on a loose ball to score. The Nigerian Premier Football League on Monday hit Kano Pillars with heavy sanctions after violent scenes at their matchday 8 home game against the Shooting Stars on Sunday at the Sani Abacha Stadium in Kano State. In a summary jurisdiction notice dated October the 13th and signed by the NPFL Chief Operating Officer Davidson Owumi, the league found the club guilty of multiple breaches, including inadequate security, a supporter misconduct, throwing dangerous objects, and assault on away players and match officials. And according to the league organizer, Kano Pillars failed to provide adequate and effective security, which resulted in unauthorized persons gaining access to restricted areas of field of play. The club also failed to ensure a proper conduct of their supporters, which led to harassment of the away team and match officials. The club supporters further gained access to restricted areas and assaulted players of the away team and match officials. Consequently, the NPF docked 3 points, 3 goals from the club's accrued points for assault on the match officials. The Confederation of African Football has officially announced the venues, date and format for the African Playoff Tournament that will determine the continent's final qualifier for the 2026 FIFA World Cup, setting up a high-stakes showdown in November 2025. In a circular sent to all members association on Monday, CAF confirmed that Morocco is already set to host the upcoming AFCON 2025 and will also serve as the venue for the decisive 4-team playoff, which will decide Africans' representatives for the Intercontinental Playoff round. And according to the schedule, the semi-final matches of the 4-team mini-tournament will take place on November the 13th, 2025, while the final will be played on November the 16th. The CAF Playoff competition will feature the 4 best runners-up from the 9 qualifying groups, determined after match day 10 of the qualifiers. And CAF outlined that in the event of draw, matches will proceed to extra time and, if necessary, penalty shootouts. The teams will be allowed substitutions, with a 6th permitted during extra time. The October 2025 FIFA World Rankings, set to published on October the 23rd, will determine and seeding of the playoffs. The highest ranked team will face the 4th ranked in one semi-finals, and while the 2nd and 3rd ranked sides will meet in the other. And that's where we draw the curtain on tonight's news. I remain Victor Daniels. Good night.